The Empire had conquered 17 star systems in less than a century. Their warships moved through galaxies like shadows of death. No species had ever survived their invasion. Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Silence, watching a small blue planet rotate slowly in the darkness of space. His four eyes narrowed as he studied the readings on his screen. This world was called Earth by its inhabitants, primitive creatures made of soft flesh and fragile bones. They had only recently discovered how to leave their own atmosphere. Their weapons were laughable. Their ships were slow. Their population was divided into hundreds of fighting nations. Let out a sound that passed for laughter among his kind. This conquest would take perhaps 3 rotations of their tiny moon. High Council of had sent him here after their scouts detected radio signals coming from this system. Standard procedure required evaluation before invasion. The scouts had spent 2 of Earth's years watching these humans. They fought each other constantly. They polluted their own world. They could not agree on simple things like climate or resources. The scout report described them as a species on the edge of self-destruction. Had read that report with amusement. These creatures would fall like all the others. He transmitted his declaration of war on every frequency the humans used. The message was simple: surrender immediately or face complete destruction. The Empire would claim this world and all its resources. Resistance would result in the death of every living being on the planet. Expected fear. He expected panic. He expected immediate surrender as had happened on a dozen worlds before this one. What he received instead confused him. The humans did not respond with a single unified voice of surrender. Instead, his communication officers reported thousands of different responses. Some were curious, some were angry. Many contained words that his translation device marked as highly offensive. But the strangest thing was that none of them seemed afraid, not truly afraid. One transmission from a human military leader simply said that Earth had been waiting for this moment, dismissed this as the foolish bravery of a doomed species. The fleet numbered 500 warships. Each one carried enough firepower to destroy a city, ordered the first strike on the human military installations. His ships descended through the atmosphere with terrible grace. They expected no real resistance. The scouts had reported that human weapons could not penetrate shields. This was true. The first missiles the humans launched bounced harmlessly off the energy barriers surrounding the invasion fleet. But then something unexpected happened. Within hours of the first attack, noticed that the humans had stopped using their standard missiles. Instead, they were launching new weapons. Weapons that his database had no record of. Weapons that seemed to have been designed specifically to find weaknesses in shields. His science officers scrambled to understand how this was possible. The humans had never seen technology before. How could they adapt so quickly? The answer came from an intercepted human communication. Apparently, something called the Internet had allowed millions of human scientists and engineers to work together simultaneously. They had shared data about the shields across their entire world. Within 6 hours of first contact, they had developed 3 different theoretical approaches to bypassing the shields. Within 12 hours, they had prototypes in production. Within 24 hours, they were deploying weapons that made shields flicker and fail. Felt the first cold touch of doubt. He ordered a ground invasion. If human weapons were becoming dangerous, he would overwhelm them with numbers. The soldiers were twice the size of humans. Their armor was impenetrable to human bullets. Their reflexes were faster. Their training was superior. 5 million warriors descended upon Earth's major cities. They expected quick victories. They found something else entirely. The humans did not fight like any species they had encountered before. They did not form neat battle lines. They did not retreat when outnumbered. They attacked from shadows and sewers and rooftops. They turned their own cities into deadly mazes. Every building became a fortress. Every street became a trap. The soldiers found themselves fighting not just military forces but ordinary citizens. Teachers and farmers and shopkeepers picked up weapons and joined the battle. Even the human children threw stones, and reported movements to resistance fighters. One general reported that killing a human soldier only seemed to make 10 more appear. He had never seen such ferocious determination in any conquered species. These creatures refused to accept defeat. They refused to surrender. They refused to die quietly. Studied the reports with growing alarm. His invasion force was taking losses far beyond acceptable projections. Human resistance was not decreasing, but increasing with each passing day. Factories that had been making consumer products were now producing weapons around the clock. Scientists who had been researching medicine were now developing new ways to kill soldiers. The entire human civilization had transformed itself into a war machine in less than 1 week. But the true shock came when learned what the humans had done to their nuclear weapons. Every species that had conquered possessed some form of powerful explosive. Most never used them because of the damage they caused. The assumed humans would follow the same logic. They assumed wrong. The humans had spent decades building thousands of nuclear weapons to use against each other. Now they had a common enemy. Within days of the invasion, all human nations had agreed to share their nuclear arsenals. They had modified their delivery systems to target ships in orbit, received warning of the first launch too late to react. 17 of his warships vanished in nuclear fire. The explosions were visible from the planet's surface. Human soldiers cheered as they watched the sky burn. Ordered a full retreat to high orbit, he needed to reassess the situation. His fleet had lost nearly 100 ships. His ground forces were scattered and demoralized. The humans showed no sign of surrendering. Instead, they were becoming more dangerous with each passing hour. The commander contacted the High Council for guidance. He explained the situation with growing shame. The council was silent for a long time. Finally, the supreme leader spoke. He asked one simple question. Had the commander researched human history before launching the invasion? Admitted that he had only read the scout reports. He had not studied the species in depth. The supreme leader made a sound of disappointment. Humans, the supreme leader explained, were unlike any species in the known universe. They were the only intelligent creatures who had evolved as persistent predators. They did not hunt by being stronger or faster than their prey. They hunted by never giving up. They would chase an animal for days until it collapsed from exhaustion. Their bodies were designed for endurance beyond anything that could match. But more importantly, their minds were designed the same way. Humans never surrendered. Not truly. Even when defeated, they simply waited for another opportunity. Their history was filled with stories of impossible victories against superior enemies. They had fought 2 massive wars among themselves that killed millions, yet they had rebuilt and grown stronger. They had survived plagues and famines and natural disasters that would have ended lesser species. Every challenge only seemed to make them more determined. The supreme leader told something that chilled his blood. The scout reports had noted that humans were a divided species, constantly fighting among themselves. This was true, but the supreme leader now understood what the scouts had missed. Humans were dangerous precisely because they fought each other. War was not strange to them. Violence was not unfamiliar. They had been practicing warfare against the most dangerous enemy in their world for thousands of years. That enemy was other humans. No alien invasion could compare to what humans had done to each other. They had never faced a species that was already hardened by constant internal conflict. The humans did not need to learn how to fight. They had been fighting since they first picked up stones and sticks. All they had done was give them a reason to stop fighting each other and unite against a common enemy. Looked at the blue planet below his damaged fleet. He finally understood his mistake. He had looked at a species divided and seen weakness. He should have seen the opposite. A species that could survive constant internal warfare was a species that could survive anything. And now that species was working together for the first time in their history. The commander made his decision. He ordered the full retreat of all forces from the Earth system. He would report his failure to the High Council and accept whatever punishment they deemed appropriate. But first, he had one final order. transmitted a message to Earth on all frequencies. He declared that the Empire was withdrawing its forces. The war was over. Earth would not be invaded again. He added a personal note at the end. He told the humans that they had earned his respect. In all his years of conquest, he had never met a species like them. He hoped they would use their remarkable abilities for creation rather than destruction. The universe, he said, was vast and full of dangers. Perhaps one day humans would become protectors rather than warriors. He suspected they would be very good at it. The human response to his message was immediate. Millions of voices celebrated across the planet. The greatest threat in their history had been defeated. But among the celebrations, some humans were already looking upward with new eyes. They had seen the stars now. They had proven they could fight and win against impossible odds. The universe had tried to conquer them and failed. Watched the celebrations from orbit. He saw fireworks exploding in the darkness below. He heard their songs of victory through intercepted transmissions. And for the first time in his long career as a conqueror, he felt something close to fear. Not for himself, not for his fleet, but for any species that might be foolish enough to threaten Earth in the future. The Empire had been the terror of 17 star systems, but they had never faced anything like humanity. Commander had made one mistake. He had declared war on a species that did not know how to lose. He had awakened a sleeping giant and filled it with terrible resolve. As his fleet jumped to hyperspace and fled back to space, he made a personal vow. He would spend the rest of his life warning others about the small blue planet called Earth. He would tell them about the soft creatures who refused to surrender. He would tell them about the divided species that united against invasion. He would tell them that some worlds were better left alone. The humans had won. They had proven themselves to the galaxy, and somewhere in the vast darkness of space, other species began to hear the story of how Earth defeated the undefeatable Empire. The story spread from system to system. It grew with each telling, and slowly, a new understanding formed among the intelligent species of the universe. Earth was not a target. Earth was a warning. Earth was proof that the small and the fragile could become the strong and the terrible when pushed too far. Commander had indeed made one mistake, but it was a mistake that changed the course of galactic history forever.